Hi guys, so you guys probably know that I'm good at fishing, but I'm also good at cooking a good barbecue. And on this video, I'm going to show you how to cook pork belly on a Weber barbecue. I'll get into more detail on why I have all these things here with me, but it just generally worked for me over the years. This is the pork belly that I bought off the butcher. Make sure that you buy a pork belly that's got a nice consistency and thickness of the meat and also enough fat on the top. If you want nice crackle, you need to make sure that you got a nice thick layer of fat as you see there. I will explain to you in depth why I need the Stanley knife, the aluminium foil, the salt and the paper towel to make great pork belly and pork crackling on a BBQ Weber. So before we do anything, we get a paper cloth and we make sure that we dampen the skin. If the skin is moist, it's not going to work out well. And make sure that you try to get rid of as much of the moisture as possible from the skin, because then that will give it a nice crunch, proper crackle. If you leave the moisture on the skin, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Try to get as much of it off. And then once we cut through the skin, we'll put salt on, and that salt will create a nice base where our pork crackling will turn out to be. That's it. Okay, so now we're going to start cutting through the skin of this pork belly. Now this is our pork crackling once it gets cooked. And you might be asking, why am I using a Stanley knife? Now, if you look closely here, the thickness of this fat, I could easily adjust the blade to the way I want it, knowing that when I cut through the skin, I'm not going to go through into the flesh. My aim is to cut through this skin deep enough that I penetrate the skin but not into the flesh. And I keep doing that a few times, slowly and steadily, and then eventually I'll go across the whole pork belly in a centimetre or centimetre and a half intervals, and I'll make sure that the pork belly fat is consistent. So here it's thin. This is where I've got to be careful, and I've got to adjust my Stanley knife to suit the depth of the fat with the skin. And then I just slowly cut through here, make cuttings, and until I'm finished, I'll go the other way, but this time I'm going to keep them spaced out more, just for easier cutting and presentation. Slowly and gently through this skin, just deep enough to penetrate the skin into the fat. I don't need to go too deep. Definitely I don't want to go too much in further to penetrate the meat. There we go. And we just progressively work our way across the pork belly. So now that we've finished with our cuts on the skin only, what we do, we place it on top of aluminium foil. Doesn't have to be perfect, as long as you get it in. Now this is a pretty big piece of pork belly, so I'm doing the best I can to make a funnel. If it's not deep enough, you just add more aluminium foil. And you don't want the sides of the walls to be too high. Now that we got the aluminium underneath and the pork belly on top, what we do, we just whack some salt. And a lot of salt. And then what we do after we finish salting, we leave it in the fridge overnight. And then when we take it out, we remove all this salt. And what I like to do, I just like to spread it along the skin, but there's a nice even texture, a bit more, and that's it. You don't have to overdo it, because overdoing it's not going to be good. Do the walls a bit more. And that's a pretty thick piece of pork belly right there. That's all right. And that goes into the fridge, and all that juices is gonna, the salt, what it's gonna do, it's gonna evaporate that moisture, and it will be great for tomorrow. Now I personally like to use these natural fire starters. They're chemical free, they're not like the white ones that emit this certain smell, because it will go onto your food that you're cooking. So if you're going to cook on the charcoal, I highly recommend you get one of these, the natural fire lighters, because they are really good, chemical free, and it's like the packet says, 100% natural. Okay guys, so we got the aluminium drip tray down between the coals, as you can see. So all the juices from the pork belly run into that tray. Well, I got my pork belly ready to put on the charcoal Weber. But first what we're going to do, we're going to put an apple in the center like that, and then we'll put the pork belly on top. The pork belly's on top of the apple, And what that apple's going to do is all the juices is going to drip down onto the tray, and it's going to make sure that nothing goes above the skin, and hopefully we get great pork crackling. Make sure that all your vents are open. I've got a Napoleon charcoal BBQ Weber, and over here as well that it's fully open, and I'll take you to the other side, which gives me a great indication of how much flame I'll have, as you can see there. And that's fully open, and I'm going to get nice heat in there, and that's what I need at first. I need heat in the Weber so I can get that pork crackle perfect. And it tells you exactly what's for smoking and what's for searing. 45 minutes, I'll wait for it to cook, and I'll see how it goes. Now, to add that smoky flavour, I've got maple, apple and cherry smoke chips, and I'm going to sprinkle that on top of the charcoal so it can give the pork and the pork belly a bit of a smokier, nicer flavour. My cat's come and joined me. He knows exactly when it's barbecue time, because he's always wanting food. How's it going, Kenzo? Cooking the corn. Old school style. My wife's got the potato prepared with her secret recipe. Some garlic there as well to give it more flavour. After 45 minutes of cooking this pork belly, I've just checked it for a minute and it needs a bit more time, but I've got it currently at 260 degrees Celsius. Because there's a lot of fat in it, I need to make sure that that fat doesn't go on the skin. So with a bit of patience, I'll get the pork crackling right. Oh, I love the sound of that sizzle. So what I've done was I poured apple cider vinegar and a bit of olive oil in this tray, and once the pork crackle's done, I then put the whole pork belly onto this tray and then back into the barbecue. Now we let the pork belly sit there for around 5 to 10 minutes, and we want to make sure, if you can see, that we got around above 80 degrees Celsius internal heat in the meat, and that means that that pork is cooked. Now we let the pork belly sit there for around 5 to 10 minutes, and we want to make sure, if you can see, that we got around above 80 degrees Celsius internal heat in the meat, and that means that that pork is cooked. Here's a nice crispy skin of pork crackling. Beautiful.